The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
We squarely see now that there was a extensive, multifaceted, multi-pronged Russian intelligence operation to penetrate and make contact with the Trump campaign. You know, you saw that graphic in the last segment with the 14 different Trump officials who were approached by Russians over the course of the campaign and the transition. That's a lot of Russians. I mean, I think that really bears some emphasis, that there just aren't that many Russians that you encounter normally in U.S. politics. This isn't a country that is actively involved day to day in the swirl of politics in Washington. And so to have that many people with that many ties to the Kremlin approaching that many different Trump officials, and to have, as Laura and David were saying in the last segment, that much sort of welcomed help from the Trump campaign. I mean, it really is striking how much the Trump campaign opened their arms to these contacts and opened their arms to this help. And it's clear that Russian intelligence was targeting the campaign, and the only question remaining is whether Donald Trump and his campaign knew it or not.
Right. Believe me.
I know. Believe me. Believe me, he knew. This is unbelievable. So we had 3 reports dumped on us on Friday, 3 of them. 2 of them from Mueller and 1 from the Southern District of New York. Also federal prosecutors, but working in the Southern District of New York, not in the Office of the Special Counsel. So we got these 3 unbelievable reports. Now, the one that came out first was very long. It was 37 damn pages. And it was really mostly about Michael Cohen being a serious serial criminal, and that he wouldn't confess. He wouldn't come clean to all the dirty things that he did. He would only, stick a shiv in Trump is what he was doing. And so the SDNY, Southern District, said, you know what, Michael Cohen wasn't all that. He was not all that in a bag of chips. He will not cooperate fully. He won't confess to all his crimes, all his financial crimes, all the things that he did, to move money around or whatever. So, we're recommending lots of jail time for him. And that's as far as we got on Friday. And then 2 more reports got dumped. And those were the shorter ones. And those are the Mueller ones. See, Mueller is succinct. He's brief. He's right to the point. And the ones that Mueller wrote said that Michael Cohen, on the issue of Trump and Russia, was very cooperative, because SDNY said, yeah, he was willing to stick a shiv in his bud. He's done with him over here is what it is. But he's committed so many freaking crimes, this Cohen dude has, in the entire time that he's been with the Trump organization. And he won't fess up. So we're going to say lots and lots of jail time's appropriate for him. Because SDNY was looking at Michael Cohen and all his crimes. Mueller, on the other hand, is only interested in the core mission of his investigation. The core mission of Mueller's investigation is whether or not Russia interfered in the 2016 election. That is the core. And Mueller says Cohen was good about that. He's dropping dimes on everybody is what he's doing. And Mueller did not take a position as to a particular sentence for the Michael Cohen. All he said, was, he finally came clean after he was confronted with documentary evidence, apparently communications like emails and other things. And then suddenly he was like, all right, I'll tell you about Trump. And then he became this great American. I'm putting my country first. I'm putting my wife and family first. Yeah, because you're still concealing the financial crimes so that no one could take that money like they did from Manafort. So the Cohen document is really, really stinking interesting, because what's in this Cohen document is not only that Michael Cohen withheld material information to the core mission of the Mueller probe, which is Russian interference in our election, but that he sought to obstruct justice. And how did he do that? He lied to Congress, he lied to the House, he lied to the Senate. And it wasn't just, and they go to great lengths in this short little document about it. I mean, he says it in like 7 pages here. It's not that long. But he says, that the defendant lied to Congress about a business project called the Moscow Project that he worked on during the 2016 presidential campaign while he served as executive vice president to the company. The company is the Trump Organization. And as special counsel to the owner of the company, Individual One. I got to make some hats, you know what I mean? Just for shits and giggles. I want to make like a black hat with Individual One. I don't want to make it black. I got to make it red, or else it's going to lose its meaning and its fortitude and its power. But yeah, and he said the defendant admitted only to those lies, which he made publicly and in submissions to Congress, in order to, and this is what blows my mind, why they spent the whole weekend, the talking heads did, talking about whether or not Michael Cohen proved that Donald Trump violated campaign laws. Those are felony laws. But you know what? That's just like, compared to what we're talking about here, which is conspiring to defraud the United States in an election with the help of a foreign adversary who stole hacked documents from the DCCC, from the DNC, and from Hillary Clinton's personal emails. I mean, and her campaign manager. I mean, in order to promote Donald Trump and deter people from voting for Hillary, to make her think she was a pedophile and she was evil and she was dying of it and she was having a stroke, and over here she's got pneumonia, and over there she's stroking out. All this promoted by Roger Stone and Alex Jones and Jerome Corsi, the managing editor of some swill called InfoWars. I mean, those are the guys you want to, see do the perp walk for real. But anyway, this is so interesting. He says, that during the 2016 presidential campaign, while he was the executive vice president of the Trump Organization, and while he was special counsel to Individual One, the defendant admitted he told these lies, which he made publicly and in submissions to Congress, in order to, and this is the bread and butter. These are the carbs here. 1, to minimize links between the Moscow Project and Individual One. To minimize the links between Donald Trump and Russia. That's why he was lying. And 2, to give the false impression that the Moscow Project had ended before the Iowa caucus and the first presidential primaries, in hope of limiting the ongoing Russia investigations being conducted by Congress and the special counsel's office. He was obstructing justice. He was shifting timelines. He was saying things that were absolutely untrue, not only on the TV and stuff and on radio shows and swill like that, but also in written submissions to Congress. And Mueller goes through great pains to say this couldn't have been hyperbole. It couldn't have been something he just, said on the spur. You know why we know that? We know that because he wrote it down and submitted it to Congress, both the Senate and the House. He says, in recent months, however, the defendant has taken significant steps to mitigate his criminal conduct. He chose to accept responsibility for his false statements and admit to his conduct in open court. He's also gone to significant lengths to assist the special counsel's investigation. So Mueller, in his core investigation, is saying, oh, he was perfectly willing to roll over on Donald Trump, perfectly willing to do it. And you know why? Because Donald Trump is not like that loyal. Did you see that beautiful video of that little, he's like a beautiful golden lamb sitting at the campfire at a burnt down house. Oh, this will bring tears to your eyes. This is like the best Hanukkah story ever. That and my cousins had a Hanukkah party last night. I'm the baby of the cousins, you can imagine. Our history spans the age of time. Woohoo! And the stuff we did and saw, and we're funny. Anyway, I digress. The dog. This was a beautiful video. A golden lamb sitting in front of a burnt down house waiting for his owner to return to the burnt down house. This dog, having fought through the fires to stay alive, sitting there waiting for his owners to come back. And finally, after 2 weeks, the owners of the burnt down house were permitted access to their burnt down house. And when they went back, what did they find? Their loyal dog sitting there for 2 weeks, waiting for them. That's loyalty. Donald Trump possesses none of that. Apparently, Michael Cohen did, but Donald Trump dissed him so hard that he broke it. And that dog is now Cujo. Because Michael Cohen met with the special counsel's office 7 times voluntarily and provided information not only on his own conduct, but that of others on core topics of the investigation by the special counsel. Oh my God. That means Jared. That means Manafort. That means Ivanka. Okay, that means everybody. That means Sessions. That means all of them over here. This is bad. And he committed to assisting the special counsel's investigation. The information he has provided has been credible and consistent with other evidence obtained in the special counsel's ongoing investigation. Okay. Here's the offense conduct. The defendant's lies to Congress were deliberate and premeditated. His false statements did not spring spontaneously from a line of examination or heated colloquy during a congressional hearing. Oh, no. Hell no. Well, it doesn't say that. They started in a written submission that he chose to provide to both houses of Congress ahead of his appearances. These circumstances show a deliberate effort to use his lies as a way to set the tone and shape of the course of the hearings in an effort to stymie the inquiries. You know what that means? Obstruction of justice. That's what that means right there. The defendant amplified his false statements by releasing and repeating his lies to the public, including to other potential witnesses. The defendant was scheduled to appear before both intelligence committees in closed sessions, and prior to testifying, the defendant made a public appearance at the U.S. Capitol, remember this, and released his prepared opening statement, which falsely claimed that the Moscow Project was terminated in January of 2016. That was false. And here's the real key stuff that shows you how, well, you know, I mean, you can just remember, where's my favorite clip of all time? My favorite clip of all time. Thank you. Yes, 31.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press.
Okay. So that day was the first day that the Russians started hacking Hillary Clinton. They had previously hacked the DNC. They had previously hacked the DCCC. But that day, when the president said, Russia, if you're listening, why did he pull Russia out of his giant orange ass? I mean, what would make you go there? What would make you think about that? Well, turns out that the defendant, Michael Cohen's false statements obscured the fact that the Moscow Project was a lucrative business opportunity that sought and required the assistance of the Russian government. If the project was completed, the company could have received hundreds of millions of dollars from Russian sources in licensing fees and other revenues. The fact that Cohen continued to work on the project, here's the best part, and discuss it with Donald Trump, individual one, well into the campaign, was material to the ongoing congressional and special counsel investigations, particularly because it occurred at a time of sustained efforts by the Russian government to interfere with the U.S. presidential election. What is he telling you there? Mueller is telling you that that Trump was being consulted by Michael Cohen, who was talking to Dmitry Peskov, who was the press secretary for Vladimir Putin personally. At the same time, Russia was hacking at the same damn time. And Trump was kept informed the whole way through. The whole way through. And then he says, similarly, it was material that Cohn, during the campaign, had a substantive telephone call about the project with an assistant to the press secretary for the president of Russia. That is Dmitry Peskov's personal assistant, and they talked for 20 minutes. They had already hacked the DNC. They had already hacked the DCCC. It's July 27th. That's when Donald Trump said, hey, Russia, if you're listening, I want Hillary's emails. And that day, they hack Hillary's emails. And Cohn is informing Trump, this project is worth hundreds of millions, and we're right up there. We're inside the Kremlin, baby. Keep it up. Keep going. Holy crap.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
I've been talking to people in Washington, and his aides, including his legal team, are well aware that at least one of the principal witnesses who has been interviewed by Mueller, a major figure in this investigation, came out of being interviewed by Mueller and said they know everything about Russia. Meaning all of the presidents, Donald Trump, his business dealings in Russia, as well as Russian figures trying to be in touch with the campaign. Does that mean there is a conspiracy or collusion? We don't know. But what we do know is that all of the lies, the most important lies told by Trump, told by his son, told by his campaign ads, told by Flynn, told by Manafort, and you can go on and on. They're all about Russia. Why is this if there's no collusion, if there's nothing there, if there's nothing to investigate? It's all about Russia.
You've got Russia.
No, you have it now. You may have given me Russia to look into, but now you have to deal with what we found. This is so bad. And this is what it's the defendant's false statements to Congress. This is very important, everybody. And I don't know why the news media is harping on, the SDNY document about Michael Cohen and the Stormy Daniels payment. Yes, that's campaign finance violations, of course, and those are two felonies. Paying off Stormy Daniels and the way that he did that with the money, the illegality of the movement of that money and these fake shell corporations, and all this, and lying about. Yes, it's bad. It's bad. But you're not going to impeach the president because he paid off Stormy Daniels or Karen McDougal. You're not going to impeach the president because can you imagine what the hearing there would look like? I mean, just the witness. It's going to be Stormy Daniels as a witness, a Playboy model, slash health writer, Karen McDougal. You're going to have David Peckerhead with limited immunity, standing there going, who runs this rag, the National Enquirer, who catches and kills stories. And Michael Cohen, who is a degenerate liar. No, we're not going to impeach the president over campaign finance violations. And if we do, it would be the stupidest thing that we ever did with a majority in the House. Dumb! I am not down with that plan. You know how many Trump pansies will point to that and go, see, told you there's no Russia. It's about the women. And we like that misogyny. We like that he's got, girls on the side. Now, I have no problem with what Stormy Daniels does for a living. None whatsoever. I'm telling you, if I would have lost this weight, years and years ago when my ass was still, you could bounce a quarter off it. Back then in the day, I'd be on a pole. No way, I would not. All cash business, no taxes. Come on. Plus, with my family connections, we could have launched a hell of a channel. I'm just saying, I come from a long line of people. Very colorful we are. But anyway, the defendant's false statements to Congress began in approximately, and this is important, late August of 2017. The president was president. That's when he submitted his written statement about the Moscow Project to the Senate and to the House, and his false statements continued through his oral testimony before the committees in October 2017. And when Cohen first met with the special counsel's office in August of 2018, he was still lying over here. He repeated many of his prior false statements about the circumstances of the Moscow Project. Only when the defendant met with the special counsel's office a second time on September 12, 2018, after he had pled guilty in U.S. v. Cohen, did the defendant admit that his prior statements about the Moscow Project had been deliberately false and misleading. Cohen admitted that he lied to Congress and to the special counsel's office about the Moscow Project. He provided detailed information about the true circumstances of the Moscow Project, including its duration, the persons, plural, the persons involved in the discussions, contacts, plural, with Russian government officials and discussions during the first half of 2016 about the possibility of travel to Russia in connection with the Moscow Project. In addition to connecting the timeline and detailing the contacts he had during his pursuit of the Moscow Project, Cohen explained financial aspects of the deal that would have made it highly lucrative for the Trump organization and himself. The information provided by Cohen about the Moscow Project in these proffer sessions is consistent with and corroborated by other information obtained in the course of the special counsel's investigation. The defendant has provided and has committed to continue to provide relevant and truthful information to the special counsel's office in an effort to assist with this investigation. The defendant has met with the special counsel for 7 proffer sessions, many of them lengthy, and continues to make himself available to investigators. His statements, beginning with the second meeting with the special counsel, have been credible, and he has taken care not to overstate his knowledge or the role of others in the conduct under investigation. The defendant's assistance has been useful in 4 significant respects. First, the defendant provided information about his own contacts with Russian interests during the campaign and discussions with others in the course of making those contacts. For example, as he described above, the defendant provided a detailed account of his involvement and the involvement of others in the Moscow Project, and also corrected the record concerning his outreach to the Russian government during the week of the UN General Assembly. The defendant also provided information about attempts by other Russian nationals to reach the campaign. For example, and these is just one example, okay? One is this one, and here's another example. November 15, Cohen received the contact information for and spoke with a Russian national who claimed to be a trusted person in the Russian Federation who could offer the campaign, quote, political synergy and synergy on a government level. You know, that means my father's company was called Synergistics, as a matter of fact. My cousins remember a lot of things. I got to tell you, got a family. It's just crazy. I love them. And that just means one group working with another group to make things run on time and well. So they're talking about the Russian government providing a well-oiled machine to the Trump campaign. Now, I believe I know who the trusted person is in this context. This, I believe, is Ivanka's friend, the Russian weightlifter, who wrote to Ivanka, and then Ivanka passed his name on to Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen then contacted that Russian wrestler, and that didn't really go anywhere because Felix Sater, who is an FBI informant, and has been for many, many years, who was the advisor to Donald Trump, the special advisor in the Trump organization, right? And Felix Sater's always been playing the double game his whole life. Felix Sater told Michael Cohen, oh, you don't need to talk to this weightlifter guy. Even though this weightlifter guy has, kind of built a business in Russia, which, he'd need Putin's okay. He sells, vitamins, and he sells, weightlifting gear and clothes and things like that. And so he was the first contact, and he had contacted Ivanka because they knew each other. They had met each other when they were there, when the kids were there. Okay, and so Sater told Cohen, you don't need to pursue this Russian wrestler. I'm inside. I'm deep inside. I can get you to Dmitry Peskov. He is the press secretary to Vlad. So, okay, that's who I think the trusted person is. The defendant recalled that this person repeatedly proposed a meeting between Donald Trump and the president of Russia. The person told Cohen that such a meeting could have a phenomenal impact, not only in political, but in business as well. Referring to the Moscow Project. Because, he wrote, and this I believe is the wrestler, there is no bigger warranty in any project than consent of Vladimir Putin. Cohen did not follow up on this invitation. Why? I'm telling you why, because Felix Sater said, I got a better way to go. And then Felix Sater writes to Michael Cohen, remember, and he says, oh my God, we're really in. We can get our boy elected with Russia's help. We can really get a president of the United States. Second, Cohen provided the Office of Special Counsel with useful information concerning certain discrete Russia-related matters core to its investigation that he obtained by virtue of his regular contact with Trump executives during the campaign. So, who would that be? Everybody. Third, Cohen provided relevant and useful information concerning his contacts with persons connected to the White House during 2017 and 18. The president is president. Fourth, Cohen described the circumstances of preparing and circulating his response to the congressional inquiries while continuing to accept responsibility for the false statements contained within it. What does that mean? It means the White House was helping Michael Cohen coordinate his lies that he wrote down and submitted to Congress under the penalty of perjury as his official opening statements to both the Senate and the House, that the White House was coordinating with Michael Cohen the lies that Michael Cohen was to tell to Congress and to the Senate in order to move the timeline, in order to change the information. So, and the White House was agreeing to those lies and began to tell those lies in conjunction with Michael Cohen telling those lies. They were obstructing justice together. And I'm watching the TV all weekend, and they're sitting there going, well, you know, it seems like there's an obstruction of justice investigation. It seems like, did you not read this? What are you, daft? I mean, listen, we all know my law degree that I have is an honorary law degree. But even I can figure this stuff out. It's written in plain English over here. He concludes that the defendant's crime was serious, both in terms of the underlying conduct and its effect on multiple government investigations. The sentence imposed should reflect the fact that lying to the federal investigators has real consequences, especially where the defendant lied to investigators about critical facts in an investigation of national importance. These people are screwing around with the U.S. national security apparatus to the point where Michael Flynn was the national security advisor.
Connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Well, so far it's been true of the base. They are prepared and have been so far to believe anything that Trump tells them.
Anything.
However, it doesn't mean that the base is all of the Republican Party if this conspiracy to obstruct justice is as huge as it looks. At some point, some kind of important Republicans are going to peel away from defending Trump, and then perhaps this house of cards will start to fall a bit, because nobody wants to be defending the indefensible. And it looks certainly on the obstruction and what that obstruction was about, that we may be heading toward the indefensible for even many of the president's backers. Not the most adamant of them, not all of that 40% out there, but in Congress, there are two things happening in Congress. One is what you're hearing in public from the congressmen who are Republicans, and two, what they're saying in private to each other, and they are shaken in private, many of them, and they are very worried about where this is going to go, and they're also very worried about Donald Trump's conduct since the midterm elections, when he became Trump more aware of where the special prosecutor was headed, how boxed in he is. He has not been acting rationally in the regard of many members of Republicans in Congress. He has been acting, in their words, not my words or journalists' words, unhinged, much more than usual. And you go to my colleague Bob Woodward's book, where those closest to Donald Trump in terms of being his aides, cabinet members, we saw it in what Tillerson said the other day, they believe, many of them, that Donald Trump himself is a threat to the national security of this country. And we are seeing it as well in his reaction to Mueller. You know, we could be in for a very, very rough ride the next few months as Trump tries to fight this. We've never been in this territory with Donald Trump. We were there with Richard Nixon, but Trump is a very different figure who has absolutely no regard for the rule of law, for the primacy of law, for tradition, for what the White House traditionally stands for. And this could be an event that makes the world tremble. We just don't know. What we do know is that Mueller is well on his way to connecting the dots in a way that is very grievously affecting the President of the United States and his presidency.
So he is a national security threat to us. I hope everybody gets that, even the Trump pansies and the Cult 45 members. I mean, if you want to put this man, this demagogue, this con man, this man who is, is seeking to enrich himself by using the presidency of the United States in order to, build, all over the world. Well, he doesn't build anything. He's not a real dude. I mean, he just licenses his name all over the place, and he sells Chinese ties is what he does. I mean, this man could not sell vodka in Russia. If you can't sell vodka in Russia and you're running a casino and the house keeps losing, you're a freaking hoax, okay? You're the hoax. You're the con man. You're the fake. Dude, the house always wins. Russians love vodka. I mean, it's just so sick, right? But honestly, this man is a national security threat. You know, today, this is an aside, okay? But this is probably the most important issue that no one, really, really talks about. The financial managers for about $32 trillion worth of investment. We're talking pension funds and hedge fund managers and insurance companies. Really, really big money. Have all said today that if we don't do something like stop subsidizing fossil fuels and start taxing carbon emissions, we're going to see 2008's crash look like child's play. And that it's happening and that it's financially perilous for all these financial managers in the future, in the near future, in the next 10 years future. And Donald Trump decided he's going to be not on the side of the globe, not on the side of the 32 trillion where, you always say, well, put your money where your mouth is. See, he won't put his money where his mouth is because his mouth is a little pie hole. These managers of these giant funds, They said now. Do something now. Fossil fuel subsidies must end and substantial taxes on carbon must be introduced. The long-term nature of the challenge has, in our view, met a zombie-like response. That's the head of IFM Investors. They manage, a mere $80 billion. And it's one of the 415 groups that has signed on to the Global Investor Statement. The people who are signatories to the Global Investor Statement manage $32 trillion. They said the long-term nature of the challenge has, in our view, met a zombie-like response. This is a recipe for disaster, as the impacts of climate change can be sudden, severe, and catastrophic. Schroders, they manage a mere $23 trillion of global economic, they said the permanent economic damage would be almost 4 times the scale of the impact of the 2008 global financial crisis. Standard & Poor's, the rating agency, they said climate change has already started to alter the functioning of our world. The New York State Commonwealth Retirement Fund, that manages $207 billion, said the low-carbon economy presents numerous opportunities. And investors who ignore the changing world do so at their own peril. The London School of Economics actually put a happy face on it and said the low-carbon economy is the growth story of the 21st century. It is inclusive growth. And without that story, we would not have gotten the 2015 Paris Agreement. But the story is growing stronger, and it's even more compelling now. They're saying you need to phase out coal-fired power stations across the world. You have to move out of coal, and you have to start taxing, fossil fuels for carbon emissions, right? Taxing them, not passing it on to us, taxing them. And they said that the way that France did it is exactly how not to do it. They actually talked about Emmanuel Macron. They said Emmanuel Macron's botched attempt to increase fuel taxes and the protests that followed were a model of how not to do it. It failed to take the people along with them. This policy should have measures that allow the citizens to embrace all the opportunities that are there when we transition from coal to clean energy, and that it's a mega business in the 21st century, clean energy, a mega business, and that the amount of money that can be made in a clean economy. So you don't. They said Trump's suggestion that action on climate change was a job killer was dead wrong. You don't create jobs for the 21st century by trying to whistle up jobs from the 19th century. So this is the big money in the world. What does Trump do today? He puts us squarely on the side of Russia, petrol state, Kuwait, petrol state, and Saudi, petrol state. You're telling me they don't have something on this man who loves to make money, this man who's so supposed to be, such a great businessman. He can't see what $32 trillion worth of investor money, worth pension funds, insurance funds, city and state employee funds. I mean, all of these, mega funds. He's not chasing that money. Oh, believe me, he'd love to chase that money. He would love to. Believe me. But he can't because he's being blackmailed. He's being bribed. All for what? A stupid building in Moscow where nobody can go because you can't even get a freaking visitor's visa? You know how hard it is to get a visa? I got a visa. I went to Russia. You're talking months. That is not exactly an open society that promotes international travel. And in order to get it, he had to bribe Putin. I'll give you the $50 million penthouse is what I'll do over here. And meanwhile, there are trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in new jobs in a growth economy, in a 21st century economy that, hey, has this little side effect of having our grandkids be able to take a breath of clean, fresh air in the next century. No, he can't. He can't. He's owned. This man is literally owned. He's bought and paid for. And everyone around him knows it. Everyone knows it. You should read Manafort's little song and dance here by Mueller. Manafort is just he's just an international cover, like a. Well, they're like mafia. You know what I mean? Like he's like the police force for guys who can't go to the police. So he'd cover up crimes. You know what's really interesting? You know what we found out from these tapes of Khashoggi's murder? You know what his last words were? They're going to be the same last words that your kids have and your grandkids have if we don't actually take seriously the idea that we could actually create a clean energy economy to the tune of $32 trillion. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. That's what his last words were. And that's what your grandkids' last words will be as they're trying to be smuggled off of the planet Earth to Mars or some other rock of a planet. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And you know what else? He can't get anybody else to work for him. He can't get anybody else to work for him. He has gone to the bottom of the basement. You realize that what Trump has now? Just take a look at who works for him now. I mean, if there was like a family reunion of the people who used to work for him and don't, it would be bigger than our family. I mean, it would look, they'd need an arena. You know, we needed an entire, buffet where we grazed freely. But they are going to need an arena. That's how many people have left. So what are we down to now? You realize that the president of the free world, the president of the United States of America, has 8 people who he got from Fox News working for him. 8 people. We have our UN ambassador is a Fox News spokesmodel who looks fabulous in a sleeveless with Jimmy Choo's. I mean, like I said, Harvard, Stanford, Oxford School for International Diplomacy. Screw you. If you don't look good in a sleeveless purple with Jimmy Choo's, this government work is not for you. Only Fox News people need to apply. This is crazy. This is madness. We have a guy who works in the communications department who used to be the president of Fox News. That's who runs our communications department. The president of Faux News. Fox News, a vowel movement away from what it does to the news. That's who's supplying information to us. This is so sick, I can't even tell you. Nobody. Now, he fired Flynn. I told you that was going to happen, right? Everybody was going, oh, he said it so many times. Yes, but we knew for sure on Friday that Flynn was leaving, even though they said, Flynn said he was going to stay till 2020. Donald Trump said Flynn was going to stay till 2020. They're not even talking to each other anymore, okay? And Flynn is a racist liar, too. Because remember, he lied about Frederica Wilson being in the car with LaDavid Johnson's widow, a soldier, a fallen soldier, who was killed in Niger. And the president did not know his name. They had to hold it up for him in the limo on a card. And Frederica Wilson was there to hear it, and John Kelly called her an empty barrel and denigrated her and said she was a braggadocio. She was dedicating the FBI building in Miami, and she was bragging that she got the funding for it. Except when the funding was given for that building in Miami, she wasn't even in Congress, and he got caught so freaking fast. He should have retired then. You realize of all the generals, he's got all these generals and, even though he knows better than the generals, they're all gone. The only one left is Mattis. And you know what Mattis says? He says he can't leave. He's saving the free world. Oh, my God. He's got 8 people from Fox News. He was going to take Pence's chief of staff. That was the big rumor. Scott, didn't I tell you? I said there's no way. There's no way this kid, he's 36 years old, is going to take a job with Trump. No, he ain't going down with the Trump ship, okay? He's not going down on that dog and pony show. So he wrote a text this weekend, he tweeted this weekend, oh, thanks very much, but I'm going to retire. I'm not even going to work for Pence. I'm just going to leave, which tells me Pence is part of this. That a young kid, 36 years old, who's managed to become chief of staff to the vice president of the United States is leaving the government? Yeah. You know how I know? Because in these documents, they talk about the transition team. And I told you, Tom Barrack's going down. And you know who else is? Pence.
Maria Butina previously said in court this morning that her mind is clear, and in just the past few moments Maria Butina has said that she knowingly engaged in a conspiracy against the United States. This is all transpiring in court in a lead up to when she will formally plead guilty. The prosecutors really unveiling a lot in court in just the past few minutes. They said, Kate, 1 hour into this hearing, it was one word that Maria Butina said. She just said it to the judge. Guilty. Maria Butina has pleaded guilty to conspiracy against the United States, acting as an illegal foreign agent of Russia. This is all unfolded amid tremendous detail from prosecutors. Prosecutors talking about the fact that Maria Butina started this conspiracy in March 2015. She actually drafted a policy proposal. She called it Description of the Diplomacy Project. And in that proposal, she outlined her plan to act as an official conduit between Russia and the United States, particularly Republican officials or Republican-leaning groups like the National Rifle Association. Prosecutors detailed how she actually received $125,000 from that former Russian bank official Alexander Torshin to attend the National Rifle Association conference. They also went into great detail about how Butina wanted to make these connections with Republican officials, influential political leaders. So all of this, Kate, being laid out in court, but the most important thing happening just moments ago, Maria Butina pleading guilty to conspiracy against the United States. And Kate, she could face up to 5 years in prison. That will be determined at a later sentencing. She's going to be in jail until that sentencing. And then after she serves her prison time, whatever it may be, she likely will be deported back to Russia.
Oh boy, oh boy. And we have another thread. None of this is normal, okay? Could I just tell you that? None of it is normal. All right, so here is the statement of offense. This is what Maria Butina pled guilty to today. And I told you she's more important than you think. So is Papadopoulos. I mean, there are some, players in this soap opera of, it should be called Defrauding the United States, because there was a whole conspiracy to do that. Many players, as you know, each one had their wheelhouse in which they were operating. Bannon and Breitbart, and there was a whole media thing, the PSYOPs part of it, right. And then you had the money part, NRA, Butina, Torshin. There's soon going to be a Saudi part. A Saudi part is going to freak you out. That's going to have Jared in it. That's going to have Junior in it. That's going to have Ivanka in it. That's going to have, a lot of people in it, the Saudi part. And Eric Prince, and George Nader, and Michael Flynn. The Saudi part. I don't know if you're ready for that part, but like I said, there's multiple groups of people doing multiple things in order to defraud the United States. And in order to do that, that's a violation of law. They had to break other laws. One of the laws that appears to have been broken here is, again, the Foreign Agent Registration Act. She never told anybody in the United States, let alone the State Department, when she was applying for a student visa to go to Howard's alma mater, American University over there in Washington, at Ward Circle. I used to live right there. She didn't tell anybody what she was doing here. And this plan and this plot had begun long ago. See, she got here in 2015. But Alexander Torshin, who paid the bills for her, who helped her get here, who put her in touch with this Paul Erickson dude, who, by the way, Paul Erickson has gotten a target letter from Robert Mueller. A target letter means an indictment is coming. And he helped this woman defraud the United States. He introduced her to everybody. He gave her background information on every politician, how important they were, how to get to them, what their interests were. I mean, it was like they had dossiers on every Republican politician. Now, why is Butina so important to me? Because what's important to me is this GOP that has made so many freaking excuses for all the crap that this president had done. All of it. I mean, they just keep defending. And everybody was, is sitting here going, why are they defending? Because they're complicit. They're implicated. They were present. They know who this woman is. They traveled to Russia at the behest of Maria Butina's stupid gun rights group, which had 2 people in it. They knew what they were doing. This is just the most obvious place to connect the dots between the GOP, their complicity, money, trips they got to. Yeah, it's just so sad.
In this particular case, there's individuals, not the president, who have been accused of crimes, who have pled guilty to crimes, and this is part of their sentencing process. There's no reason to not stand by anybody in this moment. There are pleadings, there are cases, there are evidence. We're going to wait for all of it to be out there, and I would caution everyone to wait for all of it to be out there until you make judgment. Your judgment may not change.
There are thousands and thousands of rules. It's incredibly complicated, campaign finance. We have to decide whether or not really criminal penalties are the way we should approach criminal finance.
Is this something bigger? Is this a campaign finance violation, which would obviously, I don't think, be anywhere near impeachable?
It's just like a lot of other things that we've done in Washington. We've over-criminalized campaign finance.
Does it bother you, these crimes that he allegedly was involved in, the president? That doesn't bother you?
No, because I don't think he was involved in crimes. But even then, you know, you can make anything a crime under the current laws.
The question is then whether or not this so-called hush money is a crime.
We have to get all the facts, and I'm going to wait.
I think until there's more evidence produced, charges filed, those sorts of things, I think we just need to keep our powder dry.
I can't imagine basing any kind of prosecution on the word of Mr. Cohen.
I don't think anyone would consider that to be a campaign contribution. To me, if you have a wife, you have a family, you want to protect your reputation, it would be common, unfortunately, to have to pay somebody off. It's a form of blackmail. And again, this has been done in the past. To look upon that as an illegal campaign contribution, to me, is stretching the law so far.
If Schiff is taking this beyond to go forward and say there's a impeachable offense because of a campaign finance problem, there's a lot of members in Congress who would have to leave for that same place.
Okay, so there you have the GOP in complete and utter denial. They're not in denial. They know. They're just protecting their own complicity, okay? Everybody wonders, why are they doing this? Why are they? Because they were complicit, and here's the link, okay? Here is the statement of offense that Maria Butina pled guilty to today. And this is just a smidge. Okay, this is a smidge which is stipulated at the beginning of this agreement. It says, pursuant to the federal rules of criminal procedure, the United States and defendant Maria Butina. I'm guessing it's Butina because, you know, my last name is Butin, and it's Russian. And Putin, Butin, Butina, those are common names. But I like Butina. Just has a little ring to it. So, okay, Butina stipulate and agree that the following facts are true and accurate. These facts do not constitute all the facts known to the parties concerning the charged offense and covered conduct. This is just an example, and this is what they say. The statement is being submitted by the parties just to demonstrate that sufficient facts exist to establish that the defendant committed the offense to which she's pleading guilty. So they're just giving you a little tiny bit, a little tiny taste, just so that the court knows that there are sufficient facts that she conspired against the United States at the behest of a foreign adversary. Statement of facts. The government's evidence includes, but is not limited to, the following. Maria Butina is a citizen of the Russian Federation. U.S. person 1, that's Paul Erickson. Paul Erickson has gotten a target letter. Paul Erickson is about to be indicted. All right? So we'll just put his name in there. Butina and Paul Erickson agreed and conspired with a Russian official, that's Alexander Torshin, and at least one other person. For Butina to act in the United States under the direction of Alexander Torshin without prior notification to the Attorney General. Russian official Torshin has served as the deputy governor of the Russian Central Bank since at least 2015. Well, coincidentally, that is the year that they brought her here. He previously served as the first deputy chairman of the Federation Council of the Russian Federation. It's like a Senate Majority Leader is what that is. Butina knows Alexander Torshin. With Paul Erickson's assistance and subject to Torshin's direction, Butina sought to establish unofficial lines of communications with Americans having power and influence over U.S. politics. Butina sought to use those unofficial lines of communication for the benefit of Russia, acting through Alexander Torshin. In furtherance of the conspiracy, Butina drafted a proposal in March of 2015, which is when she got here, titled Description of the Diplomacy Project. In it, Butina downplayed the possibility of influencing U.S. foreign policy towards Russia through official channels. She criticized government unwillingness to compromise with Russia. As an alternative, Butina suggested that Russia could use unofficial back channels of communication to the same end. Butina then cast herself as a possible unofficial transmitter of communications between Russia and the United States. Further, Butina opined the circumstances were favorable for building relations with a certain U.S. political party, hereinafter political party number one. The pressure of a name. Who could that be? Oh, God. Butina predicted that the candidate nominated by the GOP would likely win the upcoming U.S. presidential election. Pointing to her recent travel to the United States, her experience, and her attendance at conferences organized by a gun rights group, the NRA, which Butina posited had influence over the GOP. Read, every Republican congressman gets big buku bucks from the NRA. A wholly owned subsidiary of the NRA would be the GOP. And she concludes this just as soon as she gets here. Why? Because previously they had gone to see her in Russia. I'll tell you how that happened. But anyway, Butina stated she had laid the groundwork for a back channel of communication with the next U.S. administration. For example, Butina listed actions she had already taken, including being introduced to the leaders of the GOP as an unofficial representative of Alexander Torshin's. She also identified in her proposal a series of upcoming conferences associated with the GOP that she could use to further her goal. That would be the National Prayer Breakfast. The Description of Diplomacy Project was written by Butina with Paul Ericsson's assistance. Paul Ericsson assisted with the proposal by providing Butina with information about prominent U.S. political figures and a forecast of the upcoming presidential election. Paul Ericsson also assisted by providing information about Vladimir Posner, a Russian media commentator who, as described in Maria Butina's proposal, had served as the unofficial transmitter of the policies of Gorbachev and Boris Yeltsin in the United States. Butina sent a Google-translated version of the proposal to Paul Ericsson once it was drafted, and asked for Paul Ericsson's advice on it, which he agreed to provide. Butina then sent the proposal to Alexander Torshin and others. As part of the proposal, she requested $125,000 from a Russian billionaire to attend the conferences identified in the proposal and separate meetings with interested parties, including other Russian businessmen or persons at the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to help determine where the focus of Russian interests lie in cooperating with the United States. Butina informed Paul Ericsson that she was meeting with Alexander Torshin and others about her proposal. Alexander Torshin informed Butina that her proposal would be supported. Without prior notification to the Attorney General, Butina then took steps to achieve the object of her agreement with Paul Ericsson. For example, in April of 2015, Butina traveled to the United States to attend an NRA organization event. There, Butina highlighted her experience as a gun rights advocate in Russia to gain the attention of the NRA and its members. She was introduced to influential members of the GOP, one of whom announced his campaign to run for the presidency of the United States shortly thereafter. Well, now, I checked. That was the NRA meeting in Nashville in 2015. And I mean, everyone was there, okay? Everyone. Cruz was there. Rubio was there. The only one that got snubbed was Rand Paul. But all of the, what's his name? Sarah Huckabee Sanders' daddy was there. Mike Huckabee. You name it. It was every GOP candidate that was on that stage was at that NRA convention. Every single one of them. She also invited powerful members of the NRA to Moscow to advance her agenda. And before they arrived, Paul Erickson provided Butina with background information on the invitees, including his assessment of their degree of political influence in the United States. The members came to Moscow in December of 2015. The NRA members met with high-level Russian government officials as arranged by Alexander Torshin. Prior to the visit, Butina stressed the importance of a political program as part of the trip and asked Torshin to set up meetings with high-level Russian politicians. After their visit, Butina sent Torshin a message in Russian referring to the members of the NRA, saying we should let them express their gratitude.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Malcolm, what do you make of Maria Butina? If 2015, if somebody had seen that video, they would have just thought it's some young Russian reporter, some journalist of some sort, asking this candidate a question. Turns out that she was working hard to infiltrate American organizations.
Yeah, well, when she asked that question, there were a lot of, eyes raised when you started to scrub her background and figure out where she came from. The organization that she was working for, Right to Bear Arms, was a Russian organization, supposedly a small equivalent with 2 people staffing it. That was the equivalent of the NRA. There is no right to bear arms in Russia.
Right.
You are not allowed to have any of the weapons that you can have in the United States. You can have a shotgun and a deer rifle, and they are strictly regulated. So when you go backwards and see them creating these networks of social and personal relationships, all you can come up with is that it's got to be an intelligence operation. I wasn't sure whether Butina, and I wrote about her extensively in one of my books, whether she was actually a clandestine service officer with the Russian SVR, which is the agency that's under the FSB, or whether she was an intelligence subcontractor sent out to co-opt all of these middle-aged men with a woman with a gun, which is very seductive here in the United States. Right now, her being held by the FBI indicates she is likely a Russian spy.
She is. There's no question, and it's being downplayed. It's just not really front and center, and the Saudi ties aren't front and center either, but that's the next phase. All right, so let me finish. This is just, like I said, this is an example of one of the things, or a couple of the things that she did, just so that the court knows that she's pled guilty to an actual crime of defrauding the United States and FARA violations and things like that she never registered as a foreign agent. But there's much, much more that she is accused of that is not in this document. But this document says after she sent Torshin a message in Russian referring to the members of the NRA, she wrote a note to him saying, we should let them express their gratitude now. We will put pressure on them quietly later. Meaning, pay them now, we'll blackmail them later. They will be quiet. We got them. We got them. When they came to Russia, we got them. I mean, I don't know if they were recorded in their hotel rooms. I don't know if they were seen doing things. But that she brought all of these politicos, all of these senators, all of these, NRA, high-ranking politicians to Russia. And she knows that they now have compromat, which is, the Russian word for compromising information, on them. And she wrote it twice. She said, we should let them express their gratitude now. We will put pressure on them quietly later. Allow them to express their gratitude now and then quietly press them. Now, she wasn't pressing them to bring the right to bear arms to Russia, was she? No. What is she pressing them for? She's blackmailing them. She's what they call a honeypot. She got them to Russia. She got them there so that they could be recorded, so that they could be photographed, so that they could drink their whiskey or whatever and be shown a great time. And then they would be able to blackmail our senators. And, you know, at this particular NRA event, it was everybody. I mean, everybody that was on the stage, that with all the 17 people that ran for president, but, you know, under the GOP banner, they were all there. All of them. All right, it goes on and it says, Butina also assisted a wealthy and well-connected U.S. person in hosting multiple large friendship dinners where other wealthy and influential Americans discussed U.S.-Russian relations. Butina used these friendship dinners to cultivate the individuals she believed would have the ear of the next U.S. presidential administration. At these dinners, Butina was able to meet individuals with political capital, learn their thoughts, their inclinations towards Russia, gauge their responses to her, and adjust her pitch accordingly. In March 2016, before the first of these dinners, Butina told Alexander Torshin about potential American attendees to one of the dinners based on information she got from Paul Erickson. Following that message, she emailed the wealthy, connected U.S. person, copying Paul Erickson to say, Torshin is very impressed by you and expresses his great appreciation for what you are doing to restore the relations between the two countries. He also wants to let you know Russians will support the efforts from our side. Okay, that's George Neal. That is, he's a Rockefeller Republican heir. Okay, that's who he is. He's an heir to the Rockefeller fortune. In June of 2016, Butina received an F-1 student visa to enter the United States. In connection with her application, Butina did not disclose that she would be acting as an agent of a foreign government or otherwise would be working to establish channels of communication between Russia and American government officials. Also, in furtherance of the conspiracy, Butina helped Alexander Torshin organize a Russian delegation to the 2017 National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, D.C. Torshin directed Butina to include certain people within the delegation, and Butina complied with his instructions. Butina then emailed the list of the delegation invitees to Paul Erickson. Butina explained that the people on the list had been, quote, handpicked by Alexander Torshin and me, and that they were, quote, coming to establish a back channel of communication, end quote. Later, Paul Erickson emailed another person copying Butina to say, quote, reaction to the delegation's presence in America will be relayed directly, in all caps, to the Russian president and foreign minister. That's Vladimir Putin. Throughout the conspiracy, Butina wrote notes to Alexander Torshin about her efforts and her assessment of the political landscape in the United States in advance of the 2016 election. Butina wrote some of these notes in response to specific requests from Alexander Torshin. Others she wrote on her own. Butina also sought Torshin's advice on whether to take meetings with certain people. She asked him for direction on whether the Russian government was ready to meet with some of those people, and he asked her what she planned to do with her contacts, lest she and Torshin be forgotten after the election. See, after the election, they're like, don't forget, what are you going to do with your contacts to remind them that we're going to press them now? What are you going to do with your contacts to remind them that you let them express their gratitude then, but now you're going to start to press them? Butina was aware that Torshin sometimes acted in consultation with the MFA, the Foreign Affairs place, in addition to his superiors at the Russian Central Bank. For example, in May of 2016, Torshin tasked Butina with writing him a note to explain why he should be permitted to travel to the United States to attend the NRA meeting. She did as he directed, encouraging his attendance, partly because of the opportunity to meet political candidates. Butina knew that Alexander Torshin would share this note with his superiors at the Russian Central Bank and to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to support the request that Torshin be sent to the NRA meeting. In November, okay, this is election time, in November of 2016, in response to a note from Butina about how to create a dialogue with the then president-elect's advisors, Donald Trump, Torshin told her that he did not believe that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs would go for it. Butina failed to notify the U.S. Attorney General that she would be acting in the United States as an agent of a foreign government official as required by 18 U.S.C. 951. At no time relevant to this proffer was Butina a duly accredited diplomatic or consular officer or an officially or publicly acknowledged or sponsored individual or representative of the Russian Federation or an officially and publicly acknowledged and sponsored staff member, employee, or representative thereof. Finally, if this case had proceeded to trial, the government would show that Butina took one or more actions in furtherance of the conspiracy from within the District of Columbia. Now, you know what's interesting? This is not Bob Mueller. This is the District of Columbia. This is the D.C. Attorney's Office. And these are Trump appointees, okay? These are not, political people. Well, I shouldn't say they're not political people. These are not Democrats. These are not, you can say that Robert Mueller, who is an avowed Republican, is, an angry Democrat. All you want doesn't make it true. But this has nothing to do with Mueller's investigation. This is a separate investigation into a Russian spy who came here to cultivate any potential presidential candidate. And then, during 2015-16, it became very obvious that it was going to be Donald Trump. And she was, she was down with it. Now, the reason why I love this story, the reason why the reason why I really, really love this story is because this is the Achilles heel of the NRA. This is the way that the NRA goes down. This is the way the NRA gets destroyed. Yes, the president was cultivated by numerous Russian operatives. She was tasked with blackmailing the people who would serve in Congress once Trump was elected. And apparently, by all that, he didn't do anything wrong kind of talk that we just played from the GOP across the House, across the Senate, it freaking worked because they won't say anything negative about all of the crimes that Trump is obviously being investigated for having committed. Some of them proven already, okay? Now, this is how the NRA will fall apart. Okay, because you go back in time and you read some other articles and you remember when you start reading the older pieces and even the newer pieces, you start to read that the two Russian operatives who had ties to the National Rifle Association, who were cultivating not just the Trump presidential campaign. See, now we know they were cultivating members of Congress to cover for whatever Trump was going to do with sanctions, whatever Trump's going to do if, Russia is going to invade Ukraine, and they're going to do it like any day now. Any day now. And everybody knows it who pays attention to world military movements. I mean, he's got ground forces on the border right now with Ukraine. He's moving ships. Okay, what did we send? We sent one naval vessel. He took 23 sailors. He still has those guys. No one talks about it. Doesn't even make the news, okay? He's about ready to invade Ukraine, and he's going to be able to do it with impunity because you got a Congress that won't do jack crap, and you got a president who's owned, totally compromised. Now, the NRA has only said that it received $2,500 from Russian sources. They said it was one single contribution of less than $1,000 from one of the operatives, and that would be Alexander Torshin. That's all the NRA has ever said. They got $1,000 from Alexander Torshin, which they're entitled to get as long as they don't mix it with their political money. Yeah, but that's not exactly what they're finding now. Now what they're finding is that the Senate Intel Committee, the House Intel Committee, which is soon to be headed up by Adam Schiff, do not believe that. Because Alexander Torshin was treated to fundraisers that cost $10,000 just to walk in the door. And he was part of, quote, the golden ring of freedom, which is $1 million or more. Those are donors who give $1 million or more. And there are photographs of Alexander Torshin wearing the custom gold jacket that the Gold Ring of Freedom members get to wear, and ringing the Liberty Bell, which also the Golden Ring of Freedom gets to ring. And they show Torshin, at numerous fundraisers, starting back in Houston, starting back in 2011. In Houston, Texas. In May of 2013, he's invited to every. Now, if you know anything about fundraising events, I can give you firsthand experience about fundraising events. Let's say I'll give you an easy one. Let's say Al Gore is going to give a talk in a donor's living room. Okay, so that donor is going to host a fundraiser in their living room, and so they'll send out invitations to people who they think might be able to pay to attend something like that. So if you want to go and sit down and have dinner with Al Gore at this person's house, which is very intimate, they might say it's $50,000 for you and a guest. Now, if it's at a conference, they might say you could get to sit at a table far away from Al Gore for $5,000. But if you want to meet and greet with Al Gore, you have to give $7,500. And if you want a private conversation with Al Gore, then it's $10,000 per person. Like that. That's how it works, right? And the same thing with the NRA, right? You get invited to a fundraiser, you have to give money. And Torshin posts photos all over. I mean, just Google it, NRA Alexander Torshin, because now you know who he is, right? There are photos online all over the place. In hotel suites, at a fundraising event, at a fundraising dinner, at a fundraising auction, at a ceremony for the Golden Ring of Freedom, ringing the Liberty Bell, wearing a custom gold jacket. And back then, Torshin was able to co-opt the NRA. Around 2013, he talked the then president, board member of the NRA, David Keene, into traveling to Moscow to talk to, guess who? Maria Butina's stupid two-person organization, Russia's gun rights, or whatever the stupid thing, Russia's right to bear arms. That's two people, okay? It's not a real thing. You can't, there's no right to bear arms in Russia. And they all started traveling to Russia. You've got the president of the NRA at the time, James Porter, the NRA operations director, Kyle Weaver, Wayne LaPierre, who was the executive vice president at the time. And they're going there and they're doing grassroots fundraising in Russia.
Connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
All right, let's go back in time a little bit and explore what Alexander Torshin was doing with the NRA as far back as 2011. Okay, so I told you could Google Maria Butina and Wayne LaPierre. You could Google Alexander Torshin, NRA. You'll find a million pictures of him being included in these $1 million or more fundraising, fundraisers, but also in the circle of people who have given $1 million or more to the NRA. All right? Just so you know. Among other NRA leaders, Torsion is pictured in Houston with then outgoing president and current board member David Keene, who traveled to Moscow later that fall and again in 2015 to attend events hosted by Maria Butina and her gun rights group, the Right to Bear Arms. Also appearing with Alexander Torsion in the Houston photos are incoming president James Porter and then NRA director Kyle Weaver, who worked under NRA executive vice president Wayne LaPierre, including overseeing grassroots fundraising. Torsion also hobnobbed with top Ring of Freedom $1 million or more donor Joe Gregory and former Republican House Majority Leader Tom DeLay. Now, you remember why Tom DeLay is, Hot Tub Tom? Do you remember? He's not in Congress anymore because he got caught in the Jack Abramoff lobbying scandal, okay? And so he was run out on a rail because he's dirty, right? Okay. In one photo, Torsion poses with Keene and Weaver in a hotel suite. Torsion is wearing an NRA conference ID badge, an official 2013 NRA conference pin on his lapel, just below his Russian flag pin. Don't you ever, you GOP, you maggots, you Cult 45 members, you Trump pansies, don't you ever come and tell me about a flag with regard to, Central Americans. Oh, they're carrying the wrong flag. This guy's got a Russian flag and an NRA pin, and he's with the $1 million or more donors and cultivating members of the House and the Senate as far back as 2011. Guys so dirty, they're not even there anymore. And guys so dirty, and they are there, which is the important part. Okay, so Keene first became friendly with Torsion in 2011 and the NRA conference in Pittsburgh, and he hosted Torsion at the subsequent 2012 conference in St. Louis, where Torsion said in a tweet that he and two unidentified companions were treated by the NRA as guests of the highest level. When Keene traveled to Moscow in the fall of 2013, he spoke enthusiastically at Maria Butina's gathering. He said, working together with the Right to Bear Arms was an honor, and that he had hosted Torsion over the past 3 years at the NRA. Among the high-profile speakers at the NRA 2013 conference in Houston was our current national security advisor. Our previous national security advisor was so compromised by the Russians that Sally Yates had to run to the White House 26 days into the Trump presidency to tell him, you got to get rid of this guy. This guy's compromised. The Russians have everything on him. Everything. I mean, you can't have a national security advisor that could be blackmailed by Russia. And Russia knows he's lying, and he is lying. And he, he's trying to build some sort of a nuclear reactor in the Middle East with, Russia building it. And so he's been replaced, Michael Flynn, who will be sentenced on Monday. Jesus. By this guy. This guy. Here is a tape of our current national security advisor, John Bolton, addressing Maria Butina's group.
Thank you for this opportunity to address the Russian people on the 20th anniversary of the adoption of the Russian Constitution. This document signaled a new era of freedom for the Russian people and created a new force for democracy in the world.
Oh, my God.
While more time has passed since the United States created our own constitutional freedoms, we never forget the joyful optimism that marked the beginning of our democratic history. We wish our Russian friends that same hope and pray for you the strength to preserve these first precious freedoms. Today, you're engaged in a historic debate about the possible expansion of your freedoms. Should the Russian people have the right to bear arms? I can share with you a word about what this particular freedom has meant to Americans and offer you encouragement as you consider embracing that freedom, which so many nations and cultures have found to be the essential defense for all other freedoms.
Okay, so that's 6 years ago, and guess what? Putin has never given the Russian people the right to bear arms. That never will, because this is a phony group that was set up to infiltrate the NRA, because the NRA is the owners of the GOP, which Butina was sent here to cultivate, co-opt, and get dirt on for the purpose of pressing them later. By the way, Mr. Bolton's security clearance is on the list of issues at the House Oversight Committee. The House Oversight Committee, once it becomes, the chairman becomes a Democrat next year, they are going to investigate how John Bolton got his security clearance and whether or not it should be revoked, because they want to know whether or not John Bolton disclosed his involvement, let's say, with Maria Butina and any related contacts that he might have had with Russians who sought to defraud the United States, right? Now, it is legal for foreign citizens to donate to causes, but federal law does not allow them to contribute any money to U.S. political campaigns. And that includes a ban on donations to PACs, political action committees. Now, McClatchy, who is part of the consortium of the Panama Papers, when I tell you McClatchy is a great news organization, I'm not kidding you. These are like some of the finest, hardest working reporters that get very little attention. And it's sad because they do really grueling work, going through ledgers and papers and money trails and all that, right? So McClatchy in January issued a report. And in their report, they said that the FBI was investigating whether or not Russian money was illegally flowing through the NRA into the Trump campaign. Because the NRA gave Donald Trump the largest amount that the NRA has ever given to anybody, a whopping $30 million. You know, and prior to that, I think in 2012, when Obama was running for re-election, the NRA spent $15 million. So this is double. Yeah. Now, according to the publications that the NRA puts out, they had a fundraiser. That one that I was telling you about that Torsion was at in Houston. They had a fundraiser that night. And they put out a press release about that night. And they said that they had raised a whopping $1.7 million during that one fundraiser in Houston, including a record individual who, at the auction that they held for fundraising purposes, that Alexander Torsion was attending, they said that they got one individual who donated a record $500,000 at that banquet and auction. Torsion was presented at that particular banquet / auction with the gift of a rifle. This is according to Rolling Stone magazine. And the Maria Butina, the Russian operative, also tweeted from Houston that when he stood up, Torsion, the NRA greeted him with thunderous applause. And that's because they only applaud big money. Big money, everybody. It's like a game show. Big money, big money. Come on, big money, big money. And so we're now going to have a complete, not just a glimpse, which is what we get now, but a complete accounting of the NRA's activities regarding Maria Butina, regarding Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Mike Huckabee, everybody but Rand Paul, who was snubbed, and Alexander Torshin and Maria Butina. And of course, Alexander Torshin, he's a banker. He's a banker. He's the money guy. He's the guy that puts the money wherever it needs to go. So for me, this is a twofer. This is just a twofer. It's information that shows you how the Russians got money to Donald Trump and tried to elude detection. It tells you the story of Maria Butina and how she really is a spy, and she has been for a really long time, and how she lured our politicians, the GOP type, over to Russia, let them throw down, let them party, got their compromise, said let them express their gratitude for the great time they had. We'll press them quietly later, which is why they are all denying Russian interference in our election. They were part of it. They were the recipients of it. They're complicit in it. And I got to tell you, we only have like 2 campaign finance laws. One is can't take foreign money, and the other is political action committees can't coordinate with presidential campaigns. Those are like the only 2 campaign finance laws we have. And Trump managed to violate both of them. We only have the 2.
Okay, well, first, Chuck, it's an awful ruling. It goes, of course, it undoes pre-existing conditions. It jeopardizes the tens of millions who are getting good health care in the exchange, but it goes way beyond that. It would knock out funding for treatment of opioids. It would raise drug prices and close the donut hole so seniors would pay more for drug prices. It would eliminate a lot of maternal care, all kinds of women's health. It's an awful, awful ruling. We're going to fight this tooth and nail. And the first thing we're going to do when we get back there in the Senate is put a vote on the floor urging an intervention in the case. The judge, a lot of this depends on congressional intent, and if a majority of the House and a majority of the Senate say that this case should be overturned, it'll have a tremendous effect on the appeal. So our first stop is the courts. We believe this should be overturned. It's an awful, awful decision. And it puts a lot of our Republicans in a box because they sort of were once, two-faced. On the one hand, they said they want to preserve pre-existing conditions and preserve health care. On the other hand, Donald Trump and a large number of Republicans brought this court suit. So there are going to be a good number of Republicans who are going to really have to make a decision whether to join us in this intervention or face very severe consequences.
Oh, my God. Okay, so this is what happened on the eve of the last day for enrollment for health insurance. On the eve of the last day of open enrollment, a judge in Texas who was shopped for and specifically chosen by 19 Republican states. Remember we were talking about, when they were running these stupid commercials, Josh Hawley going, oh, my son has a pre-existing condition, so of course I'm going to uphold pre-existing conditions. Oh, healthcare, of course we're going to do everything we can, Rick Scott of Florida said as he was running for the Senate, right? Remember this?
Well, I believe that if you have a pre-existing condition, you need to still be able to get health care. So it's very important to me. I think everybody ought to be able to get health care insurance. I do believe that you've got to start, working to fix the law. I mean, that law caused our premiums to skyrocket.
That law did?
I don't believe in grand bargains. I believe in incrementally trying to make change. We've got to allow more competition. We've got to let people buy the insurance that fits for their family. And we've got to reward people for taking care of themselves. We've got to...
What does that mean? Like rewarding people for caring for themselves? Does that mean eliminating community rating and charging more for people who are obese or who are...
I think it's no different what companies have done in the past. They have smoking cessation programs and things like that.
They're going to put you on a diet, everybody, is what they're going to do. They want to put you on a diet if you have a weight issue, if you have diabetes. They're going to tell you that if you eat sugar, then you're not taking care of yourself, so we must charge you more. I mean, this is just crazy. And the whole midterm election, the Democrats talked about health care, and the Republicans talked about build a wall, okay? And when it finally got down to an obvious an obvious thing that the American people really cared about the American people. They cared about their own pocketbooks. They cared about their own health care. They cared about their own minimum wage. They cared about their own jobs. They cared about, whether or not tipped workers were going to be given a minimum, right? When it all became really apparent to the Republican Party that we don't give a damn about the games you're playing there. We don't give a damn about this power for power's sake game that you play. We care about what's happening to us. Oh, no, don't worry. We care about pre-existing conditions.
My wife, Joan, who does a super job as our First Lady, but many of you know, I said before, she's got type 1 diabetes. And Mr. President, I want to thank you. You said it again today, earlier today, and I want to reinforce it to everyone here in this state and across the country. We will always cover people like my wife with pre-existing medical conditions. Don't believe the lies. Don't believe the lies. We will cover people with pre-existing conditions.
He's lying because when all this was going on, Scott Walker, Josh Hawley in Missouri, Brian Kemp in Georgia, Pam Bondi here in Florida, they were all joining in a lawsuit. A lawsuit that would repeal all of the ACA, all of it. And that includes coverage for pre-existing conditions. That includes no lifetime caps on what your insurance company has to pay if you become insanely sick or if you're in a terrible, terrible accident and you need to be the $6 million man. You need to be outfitted with, God forbid, prosthetic legs or prosthetic arms, or your back needs to be rebuilt. Whatever it is, no lifetime caps. Mental health care coverage. That's in Obamacare. Addiction services for whatever you're addicted to. Everybody talks about opioids. It's not just opioids, okay? You got a lot of methamphetamine freaks out there. Like, so we'll play a couple of them. You've got the whole Medicaid expansion is in the ACA. The entire thing, where if states agreed to expand Medicaid in their state, they would get payments. They would get millions and millions of dollars to pay for that. The prescription drug benefit was in there to help people pay. And so while they were sitting there telling you, oh, no, we're all about the good stuff that's in the ACA. Oh, no, we really care about the pre-existing conditions. We care about community rating, meaning you can't be charged more because you're in worse shape at the time that you do open enrollment, meaning you are overweight or you do have an issue with certain food, sugar or gluten, you have celiac, whatever it is, right? So these hypocrites were out there the whole time that they were at the stump saying, no, we want to keep premiums down and we want to cover pre-existing conditions.
My question is on health care. How is it possible to keep premiums down and cover pre-existing conditions without the individual mandate to fund it?
Well, first of all, what we're doing, and if you look at the Department of Labor, also Secretary Azar, what they've done, they've come up with some incredible health care plans, which is causing great competition and driving the prices right down. But we are getting rid of the individual mandate because it was very unfair to a lot of people. But at the same time, we're covering the people that need it. But the individual mandate was a disaster because people that couldn't necessarily afford it were having to pay for the privilege of not having to pay for health care, and it was bad health care at that. So we are working many plans for health care. We're creating tremendous competition.
Yeah, you know what he did? He put these minimal, bare bones plans back into existence. They were outlawed by the ACA. You could not issue a plan on the exchange. You couldn't participate unless you offered 10 essential benefits. And they, Congress tried and tried and tried to undo the ACA, and they couldn't get it done. How many votes did they take to repeal the ACA, to repeal Obamacare? And it never would pass. They could never get it done. In 2012 and 2015, the Supreme Court heard cases about whether or not the individual mandate was constitutional. And the Supreme Court decided that it was part of Congress's taxing authority, that they could ask people to pay for not covering themselves as a taxing right that Congress has. Congress wanted to tax a behavior that they wanted less of. So they taxed the behavior of going without health care. And the Supreme Court upheld it. So you know what happened? These Republicans, they went back, and the only thing that they could get done was to zero out the penalty for not having health care. They could have indexed it for income. They could have said people below $45,000 who can't afford to pay the tax, can't afford to pay that penalty, they don't have to pay. They could have done that. They didn't. They zeroed it out for everybody, right? So they zeroed it out, but they left the rest of the law intact. That's all the Republicans did. They zero out the individual mandate, which obviously made premiums rise, not go down, idiot boy, because the money that we were collecting for people who weren't going to get health care was paying for them to go to the emergency room, which we used to have to foot the bill for. So they zeroed out the penalty. After they zeroed out the penalty, these ridiculous conservative lawyers in 19 states got together and they brought a lawsuit, and they specifically shopped for a friendly judge, a judge who would do their bidding, a judge who had absolutely no issue with violating the law. And they found one. They found this judge in Texas. His name is Reed O'Connor. And they brought the case in his court. It's a federal court, but it's a district court. It's a local court. And he wrote this really ridiculous, I mean, everybody who has looked at it, every statutory expert who has looked at, and I'm telling you, Jonathan Adler and I think it's Abby Gluck, these people were on opposite sides when the Supreme Court case was being argued. They don't agree on the merits of Obamacare, but they do agree on what statutory law says and what the courts can do after Congress legislates. And they cannot believe that this judge ignored what Congress did. And what Congress did was it left the ACA intact. All Congress did was zero out the fine for the individual mandate. If Congress wanted to get rid of the ACA, if Congress wanted to amend the ACA, which obviously they did, they zeroed out the individual mandate tax, right? But if Congress wanted to get rid of the ACA, why, it was certainly free to do so, and it tried 19 times. So this court undermined what Congress did in not getting rid of it. This court decided, and this is the sickest thing I've ever seen a court decide. Judge O'Connor wrote that he can't figure out what the intent of Congress was in 2017 because the Republicans didn't have enough votes to repeal the entire law. But he wrote it wished it could. What? Yeah, he wrote that Congress didn't have the votes, but it wished it did. That is the most ridiculously unsound legal argument anybody has ever heard in their entire lives. The intent of Congress is determined by the votes of Congress. Period. If Congress wanted to repeal the Civil Rights Act and it had the votes to do it, they could do it. But they don't, so they can't. So the Supreme Court, these conservatives step in and they say, well, racism is over, so the Voting Rights Act can be stripped of at least, pre-clearance requirements. So states like North Carolina, if they want to end early vote, right? So you see the damage that a bad conservative judge who ignores the will of Congress can do? This man is in that wheelhouse. But the conservative doctrine is not to have judicial activists. And this man literally wrote down on the paper, Congress wished it could repeal the ACA, they just didn't have the votes. What the F, man? What? He went down some damn rabbit hole to get here.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
The individual mandate penalties 80% were paid by people, 80% of the people who paid the penalty earned under $50,000 a year. So this hurt low and middle income families who couldn't afford the cost of health insurance. And it's telling that when the tax bill was on the floor, not a single Democratic senator offered an amendment to strike the repeal of the individual mandate. That's how unpopular it was. I think this will be overturned on appeal.
You do?
I do.
In the Supreme Court or in the Fifth Circuit, or where do you think it's?
I'm not sure where it will occur, but there's no reason why the individual mandate provision can't be struck down and keep all of the good provisions of the Affordable Care Act, such as coverage for people with pre-existing conditions, the mandated benefits for substance abuse and mental illness treatment, and also allowing young people to stay on their parents' policies until age 26.
See, now, all of that was struck down by a federal judge on Friday night. I don't know how many people were aware of it because, you know, the weekend is the weekend, but Friday night, on the eve of the final day of enrollment, which was December 15th, a federal court judge in Texas named Reed O'Connor declared the entire Obamacare, the entire bill, the entire legislation, the entire law, the entire Affordable Health Care Act unconstitutional. And that, listen, that would cause 133 million people with pre-existing conditions to not have health care. It would cause people who have very high health care bills each and every year because, I don't know, maybe they have, a lupus, or maybe they have an autoimmune disease like psoriatic arthritis, or maybe they have diabetes, chronic, or maybe they have, congestive heart failure. Maybe they need, transplants, and the costs are astronomical. Okay, this would put back limits on what the insurance company has to pay for your health care. This allows them to charge you more if you are one of the 133 million people in America with a pre-existing condition. This would mean that mental health services were not covered. So if you are struggling with, bipolar disorder, or you're struggling with depression, or you're struggling with, a borderline personality disorder, or any mental illness whatsoever, under the ACA, those treatments, those drugs, those cognitive therapy sessions, they were covered. It takes away the ability for insurance to pay for addiction services. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is so unbelievable. Now, here's what it really means. Nothing. Nothing right now. Why? Because the judge was too timid in his legal decisiveness, in his legal countenance, in his legal argument, which was a bullcrap argument. His argument was Congress didn't strike down the ACA, but they wanted to. So it's hard for me to figure out what the intent of Congress is, because I know they wanted to strike it down, but they didn't have the votes. Oh my God. That's like saying Congress wanted not to pass the Civil Rights Act, but, they did, but they really didn't want to. Because they like segregation, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. They liked it, but, so it's hard to figure out what they really intended to do when they voted for civil rights. I mean, this is just ridiculous. The intent of Congress is what they pass and what they don't pass, period. Oh, this was so bad. This was so bad. But this is what the Wisconsins, the Governor Scott Walkers, this is what the Ted Cruz's, Texas, this is what 19 states were doing while they were on the stump saying, oh, no. We won't repeal the pre-existing conditions thing. And we think everybody needs, addiction services. And we think there should be no And Trump started allowing the issuance of these bare bone plans that cover absolutely nothing. But sure, they cost $60 a month, but you don't get any coverage. So you're getting screwed two ways. Okay, you're paying like $700 a year to have no coverage. But they were complaining about the stupid penalty that was built into the tax law. What they could have done was they could have said people who make under $50,000 get a subsidy to cover the entire premium for their health care. They could have done that. But they were looking for an in to the court. So they decided they would zero out the individual mandate, which the Supreme Court has held was constitutional as part of the taxing power of Congress. And without the individual mandate, the zero, penalty, then they would have an in to find a friendly judge in a federal court somewhere, sitting there, who would say, well, without the individual mandate, the whole thing's unworkable, therefore it's unconstitutional. Now, the reason why it means nothing is because he didn't issue an injunction, meaning he didn't say this starts now. If he had any belief that his legal deduction was accurate and true, he would have said, and here's the injunction, it stops today, and we would have all lost our health care. Those of us with pre-existing conditions, those with us, I get my insurance on the exchange. Millions of people get their insurance on the exchange, so do I. So he didn't issue an injunction. So what does that mean? That means it's just out there now. And the markets are going to set the rates based on chaos, which now explains why my insurance went from $700 to $1,300 to $2,000 a month. Oh my God. They have thrown this market into complete and utter chaos, just like he's doing to the stock market, just like he's doing. Anything this man touches turns to actual poo. It actually dies. So here's what has to happen now. Obviously, Chuck Schumer is talking about going to the courts and doing an intervention, meaning getting a statement from a circuit court, from an appeals court, like the Fifth Circuit would be in Judge Reed's area, right? And saying that, they will intervene right away, and put some clarity, some clear thought into the marketplace. However, we don't know if we can do that. That's just one route. But it will come down to, look, if the Fifth Circuit reviews Judge Reed O'Connor and says, Judge O'Connor, this is the lamest legal argument I've seen better stuff from Randi, and she only, went to, like a half a year of, community college, and she could figure it out. What the hell were you doing over here? And they say they vacate his decision. I don't think the Supreme Court takes it up. But if they agree with him, the Fifth Circuit, if they actually agree with him, that, oh yeah, now the whole thing's unconstitutional, it will go to the Supreme Court. And we don't know what the hell that's going to be about. Although I will say, Kavanaugh was like all about statutes and severability. There is this thing, for anybody who's ever signed a contract, you probably skip over this part. Don't. There's this thing called severability. What is severability? It's a long word that means if any portion of this contract doesn't hold muster under the law of the United States, the rest of what you agreed to, the parties still can live. It can still survive. Now, what this judge should have said is that severability actually applies to the ACA. And so if you zero out the penalty for people who go without health insurance, it doesn't mean that the people who have pre-existing conditions should be charged more. It doesn't mean that people who need maternity care should be charged more. It doesn't mean that you can't get mental health care visits covered. It doesn't mean that you can't use your insurance to pay for addiction services. It doesn't mean that the people who got Medicaid expanded in their states now have to go without it, because it's severable from the individual mandate. The rest of the law still stands. That's what severability means. This was the sickest, most lame, conservative attempt at bending the law, breaking the law, literally. I mean, it was so frightening. And Stephen Miller, you know who Stephen Miller is, right? He's responsible for the Muslim ban. He's a white nationalist. Did you see, I don't know if you watch, like all the Sunday shows, but I live for them, like Face the Nation, State of the Union, Beat the Press, Meet the Press, Eat the Press, whatever it is now, right? Stephen Miller was on the TV this weekend, I swear to God, with spray on hair. You know that spray that they sell on like infomercials? Oh my God, what do they call that stuff? I forget. It's a little can, and it sprays like little fibers on your bald ass head for men who just don't have the confidence that bald is beautiful. And it is. If you have 3 hairs and you're still combing them over, just go for it, man. Get yourself a good shave kit. Get some nice hair oil, beard oil or a shave gel. And get yourself a nice sharp razor and, baby, just go for that. Because that is hot. That screams confidence. It screams I don't care. And there's something very cool about it, I have to say. But I love knowing that Stephen Miller obsesses over his stinking hair almost as much as I obsess over mine. Oh my God. He was literally lying about Obamacare on the TV with spray-on hair.
Breaking news, the Washington Post has just obtained a draft of a report that has been prepared for the Senate about Russia.
That's the wrong one. Where is his spray-on hair?
So to be clear there, you're predicting that this goes to the Supreme Court and that the Supreme Court ultimately strikes down.
Look at that.
I believe that's the likeliest outcome.
Look at this right here. See that? That right there? That is spray-on hair. Look at that. You could see like right here. This is where the spray ended. He just went and he gave himself a widow's peak in that in that Nosferatu way, in that Rudy Giuliani, I'm with you, kind of I'm your brother way. Holy crap, that is weird. That is weird.
Because Obamacare has always been unconstitutional.
It has never been unconstitutional.
Well, technically, this decision wasn't possible until the tax law was put into place.
Right.
But, in terms of what this means for the 20 million Americans, it does create some uncertainty and
we also
disruption
think about the 28
marketplace.
million Americans who still don't have health insurance because Obamacare didn't work. Fortunately, because of the
Oh my God. Okay, and we're just going to stop Mr. Spray-on hair doozy there for a brief moment. Okay, 28 million people are too poor to even get health care with subsidies, okay? 28 million people go without health care in this country as a choice, okay? 20 million people are in the exchange. I'm one of them. And 133 million people have pre-existing conditions who now have health insurance that they can afford. So he's lying.
dramatic action this administration has taken, we've increased choice, we've increased competition, and for the first time in a long time, premiums on the exchanges are going down, not up.
So,
oh my God, this clearly shows that this man needs to go to a supermarket and experience self-checkout and, even the new Google stores where, or it's an Apple store, you just, you take what you want and it's watching you and scanning you. Oh my God. Because he has no idea what's really going on here in the real world. Here in the real world, premiums on the exchange have skyrocketed. Skyrocketed. Why? A, there is no penalty for going without health care coverage. They stopped the risk corridor payments, which was supposed to help the insurance companies cover people with pre-existing conditions. And they cut payments for people who had out-of-pocket expenses. So the cost to the consumer is through the roof. And they just sit there and lie. Oh, and that is why the cost of insurance on the exchanges has come down. It has gone up exponentially. Mine has literally tripled. My premiums. Tripled. Okay. There you go.
Will the president instruct Republican governors to continue to implement the law until there is a replacement?
Well, everybody's bound by the law as long as the law is in effect. I think the important thing, again, is for real bipartisanship to happen, for Democrats to work together with Republicans. You have lawmakers from both sides of the aisle on your show today.
So you want to start from scratch on a new health care law?
Obamacare was a disaster.
Okay, not for me, sprayhead. Not for me, aerosol boy. For me, it was a godsend. It literally saved my freaking life. That's number one. Number two, if the law is unconstitutional, how in the world are we living in a world where an unconstitutional law is dictating American jurisprudence? It can't be. See, this is the sick part. If it really was unconstitutional, this judge would have issued an injunction to get this law to stop being the law right now. But he doesn't have the belief in his own stinking legal acumen.
Fortunately, again, the president has taken significant action to bring down the price of insurance on the
The president has not taken any action that would bring down the price on the exchange. The president has increased the price on the exchange because the president stopped the risk corridor payments. The president stopped the out-of-pocket subsidies, for people who couldn't afford their out-of-pocket costs. And the president zeroed out the individual mandate. His Congress did, the Republicans in Congress did, and he signed it in a tax bill, in a freaking tax bill, so that the exchanges are less supported financially by 28 million people.
Exchanges, but Obamacare never worked. For example, even on the issue of pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
An American family, say earning $80,000 a year with a few children, has to pay exorbitant out-of-pocket costs if they have pre-existing conditions.
No, you don't pay exorbitant out-of-pocket costs if you have a pre-existing condition. You pay exorbitant out-of-pocket costs if you have a plan with a high deductible and high out-of-pocket costs. And on the exchange, they will tell you, your deductible is $6,000. Your out-of-pocket costs are going to be $25,000. If you go out of network, you're going to pay for the whole thing. He's lying.
Do so much more.
Strikes down the law, then those pre-existing condition protections are also gone. So are you
a flawed law would be off the books, and this president, working with members of both parties, would be able to replace it with something that not only expands choice, expands competition, enshrines purchasing across state lines, but also protects pre-existing conditions in a much better way than the current law does.
So there is no plan that the Republicans have put forward. There is no replace. There was only repeal. They never had a replace. You understand that? The plan that is ACA, the policy that is ACA, the law that is ACA, is Mitt Romney's law. This is Mitt Romney's Heritage Foundation created healthcare law. This is what the Republicans call a liberal, crazy idea. We wanted Medicare for all, or at least a public option. What's that? That meant that if I didn't want to buy insurance on the exchange, I could buy into Medicare. That's what I would do. That's what I would do if I were permitted to do so. But I'm not, because I'm not 65. So I can't. And I'm not even 62, so I can't buy in early. This man is just, he is a spray-on hair-doozy man who's sitting there lying.
The president said yesterday he wants repeal and replace handled a little bit differently.
There's no replace.
To the failed attempt by Republicans in the past.
To repeal.
And that he'll sit down with Democrats if the Supreme Court upholds the ruling. So are you predicting that you spend the next year crafting a new law from scratch?
This administration is going to be working with members of both parties, not only on health care reform, but also reducing the price of prescription drugs, infrastructure. We have an extremely ambitious domestic agenda. And of course, at the forefront of that agenda is the vital issue of border security.
But you weren't able to do that with a Republican majority in both houses. Now you have a Democratic majority in the House.
As the president has made very clear, the new Democrat House affords us the opportunity as a country to craft real bipartisan solutions on all the issues I just mentioned and many more.
He's lying. They have no plan. They've never had a plan. When Trump was up there stumping and was saying, oh, we have this great plan. It's going to give health care to everybody. It's going to cost less and give you more coverage. He was lying then. They have never crafted a plan, period, end of story. And now he's saying that with a Republican House and a Republican Senate and a president with a big fat, Sharpie, they couldn't craft a plan. All they had was an idea to repeal, period. And that was just to feed the base, the hating base, just to feed them, because the Tea Party was founded on, we hate Obamacare. They didn't know why, because now they like it. But that's their Tea Party. That was the third power grab by the Republican Party. This is sick. This is stupid. This makes no sense, because what you have is an administration that spends all its time defending the administration and no time doing anything.